Hey everybody, Lloyd here with Just Got Played, and today we're doing another game unboxing. We're following up in our continuing series of the Marvel United X-Men All-In Kickstarter. And today what we're looking at is the giant Stertch Goals Box. So this contains, let's see, I mean, it's massive. It weighs like 10 pounds. It contains 34 heroes, 5 anti-heroes, 17 villains, and 1 Lockheed piece. So if you're doing the math there, that's 39, 40, 57 minis, plus a bunch of cards and a bunch of other tokens and stuff that are needed for all of the characters. So we're probably going to have to do this in 2 waves. But let's go ahead and crack it open and see what we've got in the box. Now, for starters, this is the X-Men Marvel United, but let's just compare this real quick to the Marvel United Stertch Goals Box. So if we take a look at this one, it's not quite as big. And I don't think there are as many minis in here. This one has 33 plus 11, so it's only got 44 minis, whereas this one, like we said, has 34, 39, 40. It has 57 minis. So there's quite a bit more minis in here. But this was the that was the original Marvel All-In Stertch Goals Box. But we're gonna crack the top off this one and see what's inside, because I forgot all of the figures that came in this. So, open it up. We've got another cardboard box inside, and I believe this actually has all of the minis inside of here in their storage trays. So we'll just set this guy aside for now, and we'll go ahead and take a look at everything in here before we get to the minis. So we'll come back to these. What do we got in here first? We've got some no BAM tokens. We've got these extra hero, which I assume these are going to be, face down, and you're going to draw them. And this probably has to do with arcade, or maybe Mojo, based on the fact that it looks like its color bar is like a television. So we've got a bunch of counters and tokens. And, not a whole lot, but some. So that's the first thing in the box. We've got all these decks of cards. And I think we're going to come back to these. And first, we will take a look at all of the villains that are in here. All of the villain dashboards. And then we'll circle back to the cards. So first up, we have, there's some really different stuff in here. We've got Toad, Blob, and Pyro. So this looks like you're facing all 3 of the Brotherhood together. I hope that there is individuals in here for these guys, but maybe there's not. Maybe you can only play them as the Brotherhood. I'm not 100% sure. It kind of looks that way based off of this card deck, but we'll get into it and figure it out. So it looks like you fight them as the Brotherhood. They have some special special setup, instructions, and supervillain. So in the game, someone can play as the supervillain themselves, so it can be all versus 1. And this is the tokens that they're going to get whenever the heroes are going to get when someone plays as the supervillain to help them out. Because playing against the a player is much more difficult than a AI counterpart. So we've got Toad, Blob, and Pyro. We've got Spiral, who again has her special setup, and it looks like you're going to use, instead of the normal mission, you're going to use this card, and you're going to have to complete this in this order in order to be able to attack her. And then on the backside, there is the team versus team mode. So team versus team mode is unlocked with the blue or gold team expansions. And then you can play up to 3-on-3, again, with a supervillain player. So you can play up to 7. So it's cool. She's got her own like little mini game that you have to play in order to defeat her. Again, she's got a special setup. And here's all her special rules for the break the spell. And then she has all of these villainous plot things that you're going to need to pay attention to. So she looks like a really different villain and is going to change up how the game plays quite a bit. We've now got Silver Samurai. And he doesn't have any special setup rules. He just has some special rules like they all do. His overflow and a BAM. So kind of a standard villain. Nothing really special there. Next up, we've got the Shadow King. So in supervillain mode, hero players must keep their hero cards in hand revealed. So he always knows what you have in your hand. So that's pretty crazy. But he's got his special rules, his BAM effect, and his overflow, and he's pretty creepy. Shadow King. Now we got Sauron from the Savage Lands. So he's pretty cool. He's a pterodactyl man thing. Pretty cool. Again, no special setup on him, just his normal rules and how his overflow and BAMs work. Next up, we've got Onslaught. So he is super 90s, just big shoulder pads, big everything oversized and overdone. And spoiler, this is a combination of Magneto and Professor X. But yeah, so he's got his special rules, his BAM and his overflow. So that's pretty cool. He comes in there. Omega Red. And he's got those carbonadium or whatever they're called, the tentacles. It's basically flexible adamantium. And he's a villain for the X-Men, obviously. And he comes from Colossus's hometown, I think, right? Somewhere in Russia. Sure. Nothing super crazy with him. But yeah, there you go. Omega Red. Next up, we've got Namor, the first mutant. So it's cool. He's got a villainous plot and special rules, overflow. Nothing super fancy there. I always like when they have the villainous plot, though, because it does give an extra lose condition for the heroes, which is always nice. Mojo. So Mojo does have a special setup, and it says heroes can choose Mojoverse to be villain's starting location. If they do, Mojo's health is decreased by 2. Place 1 random hostage token face down in each location. Place the tracker on the space, on the 5 space of the ratings track. So were these I believe that's what these were. So I think these are the hostage tokens. And cool, he's got a villainous plot. He's trying to get his ratings. When the track reaches 15, the heroes lose. So it's always cool because it gives you... this one has some like changes of what happens whenever he starts getting his ratings change. Overall, pretty cool. I definitely like when they have like a special setup. Like I said, that just changes the way the game plays when they have those special rules. Mastermind... is that his name? Man, Mastermind. I am not familiar with who this is at all. Special setup: 2 heroes do not start in the hero's starting location, but in each of the locations adjacent to it. So it kind of splits up where they start. Yeah, I don't know anything about Mastermind. He looks like maybe he's part of the Hellfire Club, though. looking like he's, straight out of Hamilton, or, got the big frilly collar. So yeah, that's Mastermind. If you know who this is, let me know in the comments. I'd really like to know, because I've never heard of him. Marrow, so she is one of the Morlocks, right? And I think she was a leader at one point, maybe after Callisto. Again, she's got this special villainous plot that's going on. The heroes lose if there's an overflow in Morlock tunnels. So it looks like special Morlock tunnels must be the villain's starting location. So you got to stop an overflow from that location. So you really got to manage it. Pretty cool. Marrow. We've got Legion. I was thinking that maybe some of these were... No, I was thinking maybe some of these were... The colors were determining if they were villains or anti-heroes, but it's just random colors. So he's got like a whole special setup to go with him. Probably something to do with his like telepathy or something. So yeah, Legion, he's got 6 different personalities in his deck. That's pretty cool. And then you're going to set up his deck in a very specific way. So I assume he's going to get harder. Maybe he starts hard and gets easier. But yeah. Oh, and then he's got like special personality cards. That is really cool. If you know anything about Legion, he's got like dozens of personalities inside of him. And every time he manifests a new personality, he gets different powers. So I imagine playing against Legion is probably going to be pretty cool, just because of the amount of gameplay changes that he's going to offer. Next up, we've got Lady Deathstrike, nice Wolverine villain. She does have a special setup here. Assign the hunted token to the starting hero. They are the hunted hero. So they're bringing that hunted back. So like, I think Sabretooth had the hunted hero as well. Villainous plot. Don't want that hunted hero to get KO'd. Otherwise, insta loss. So there we go. That is Lady Deathstrike. Next up, we've got Emma Frost. And no special setup for her. So she does have these special rules with this illusional henchman. Heroes can use recruit power, or not recruit. Think of a legendary. They can use heroics to attack the henchman. So there you go. That is Emma Frost. Next up, we've got Deathbird. So she does have a special setup. No more than 3 of the locations chosen may have more starting thugs than civilians. So they're going to even out. I don't know if that's special, but she does have a villainous plot that she's trying to carry out. The heroes lose once 5 locations have a crisis token. Crisis tokens are terrible. Don't want crisis tokens. But yeah, that's Deathbird from the Shi'ar Empire, I think. Right? Like she's, I think she's a Shi'ar. Next up, we've got Dark Phoenix. She does have a special setup. Replace all the civilians with thugs in every location. That's no bueno. That's going to make her really difficult to complete that one mission, right? Because there won't be many civilians to save. Villainous plot. The heroes lose if all locations are turned face down before any missions have been completed. So I imagine that's part of her special rules. And yeah, another villainous plot. Those are always fun. Callisto. So I know she was the leader of the Morlocks. Just kind of a standard villain. She actually doesn't even take very much to knock out with 2 players, only 3 hits. So she's fairly weak, I think. So she might be one of the easier ones. Again, no villainous plot there. The Brood Queen. So the Brood Queen does have a special setup. And she does have a villainous plot. So the Brood are kind of like intergalactic cockroaches. They're kind of like the xenomorphs or whatever. They just kind of overwhelm and just multiply. Heroes lose if at the end of the villain turn, all locations have a threat card. So, wow, you got to really knock out one of those threat cards really quick. So we'll have to take a look at her threat cards and see exactly what they are, because yeah, you need to knock out one of those very quickly in the beginning of the game before she gets a turn. That's pretty brutal. Next up, we've got Avalanche. So, just kind of run-of-the-mill supervillain. He doesn't even have any special rules, just a bam and an overflow. So he's just a big beefy dude you got to punch a lot. He's got 5 health. And Arcade. And of course, he's got a special setup. Heroes can choose Murder World to be their starting location. If they do, Arcade's health is decreased by 2. Place face-down threat cards in each location, except for the villain and hero starting locations. Keep the remaining 8 cards in a face-down threat deck. Wow. Okay, so he's got some really special setup. I imagine he's going to have some like tricks and traps and stuff. But here he does have all this stuff going on, and he's got a villainous plot. The heroes lose if Arcade has 4 crisis tokens on his dashboard. So, yep, got to definitely get rid of those crisis tokens. All right, so that was all of the villains. Let's try to break into these packs and open up a villain deck and go through those. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with this one because this definitely looks like a villain deck. So let's go ahead real quick and flip through these villain cards. We're just going to have this. So it looks like first up, we've got the Brotherhood. So this is pretty cool because this is similar to the Sinister 6 one, right? Sinister 6 mode from the original game, where you're going to play against all these guys at once. And on each turn, you're going to flip each one of the villain turns. A couple of them are going to activate. And then this is going to happen down here. So this one, Blob and Pyro, then Toad and Pyro, then Toad and Blob, then Blob and Pyro. So it's pretty cool because it changes up how the game plays. And you have to fight 3 bad guys at the same time, which is really hard to manage. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. It looks like there's only 1 where, 2 where all, oh no, 3. 3 where all of them do something. Most of it is 2 of them moving at a time. But there are 3 cards that all 3 of them activate. So let's take a look at their threats. So there's like 2 threats for each one that kind of relate to each one of them, it looks like. All heroic. So you gotta get rid of that before you fight Toad and so on and so forth. So that was the Brotherhood. Let's take a look at Spiral. Okay, so she teleports things, so she's gonna add guys to every location, which is a different mechanic. And she's got these little symbols here, which has something to do with her her dashboard, and that like is the dance that she's doing. Yeah, see, so this one has, you check the symbol on the card to see if the track advances. So yeah, it looks like Spiral is going to be a completely different kind of villain. Very cool. The villains are kind of what make up the game because they change up the game the most. So here's all of her threats, and they all revolve around doing heroic actions, which most of the threats do. And they all have negative effects. Next up, we have Silver Samurai. So he's just going around, putting out thugs and civilians. Nothing super crazy with him. He's got a couple special cards here. They're all the same. Tachyon Field Sword Duel. One hero in Silver Samurai's location reveals their hand. If they don't have a total of at least 2 punchies at the bottom of their cards, they must discard all the cards at the bottom of the deck. So yeah, he's gonna knock you out if you don't have punchies available. Let's take a look at his threats. So these are always bad because that means whenever the bad guy lands there, this is gonna happen. So in addition to their BAM effects, they will also have this landing effect, which is bad. So that one's going to trigger his BAM and make it worse. So Silver Samurai does not look like a fun guy to play against. Even though he's fairly simple, he does pack a pretty mean punch. So we've got the Shadow King. He's putting out a lot of guys. That is not good. So a couple of those cards are really bad. Possession. Give 2 crisis tokens to the hero that switch places with the Shadow King. And if I remember correctly, he had something to do with crisis tokens on as a loss condition. So let's just take a look at his threats real quick. Mental illusions. Hero starting their turn in this location must ignore 1 action symbol. That always sucks. So yeah, he's not got any extra henchmen that you got to fight, which is good, but he does have some really bad cards in there. So let's take a look at Sauron. Pretty basic standard stuff here. He's got Hypnosis, which that sucks. So Hypno Token. A hero with a Hypno Token must play their card face down during the next turn, then discard the token. So basically, they don't get to play. They just put a card from their hand down, and it doesn't do anything. Add 1 Mr. Plan story card face down in the storyline for each crisis. So yeah, that's pretty bad stuff on his part. So here are the his threats. Again, no extra henchmen. These are always bad because they require extra symbols. Those are always the worst. But again, nothing super fancy there with him. Those Hypno tokens do look pretty bad. Let's take a look at Onslaught. Onslaught's putting out guys everywhere. So he's actually going to move to the next location with a landing effect on pretty much all of his turns, it looks like. There's a couple where he doesn't, but that's bad. That means he's going to be firing off that attack every single time. So he's going to give a bunch. He's just going to deal out crisis tokens like crazy. Let's take a look at his threats and see how those work. So yeah, basically he's got all his threats have the landing effect. Wow, so he's really gonna burn through his deck, it looks like, on some of these. Each hero must. Yeah, you're definitely gonna want to clear these out as fast as possible fighting against him. So you do not want those out there. Those are bad. Let's take a look at Omega Red. Again, he wasn't super special. Probably just a big beefy dude that's gonna go around and punch. He does move quite a bit though. Lethal Spores. Oh, that's right. He's got those lethal pheromone things that he can put out. Wow. So he just gives out crisis tokens, then you receive damage for him. Ugh. And then here he gets life back. Ugh, that's no fun. Let's take a look at these threat cards. He gets no scare civilians. Oh, so he's just adding people. When he lands there on a BAM, he's just going to put people out. That is pretty bad stuff. So that was Omega Red. And here we've got some supervillain cards. It's probably more down here, looks like, maybe. But these are extra supervillain cards. So when the supervillain, when a player plays the supervillain role, they get some of these cards, and they have triggers, and you can play them when the trigger goes off. So in this case, the trigger is at the end of any hero turn once the heroes have completed all 3 missions. So this is an end game one. Once they've completed all 3 missions, then you can do this. But heroes don't always complete all 3 missions, so this may never fire off. However, the effect is accelerate the next villain turn, so you're going to get to play even faster. So there's a handful of these. I imagine there's probably more sprinkled in here. This also looks like a villain deck, so let's go ahead and go through this one. So first off, we've got Namor. And Namor is putting out lots of bad guys. Imperious Rex, deal 1 damage among heroes for each Imperious Rex Master Plan card in the storyline. So that's no good, because there's a bunch of Imperious Rex storyline Master Plan cards. Ugh. Just take a look at his threats. Does he have any minions? Nope, but he does have a bunch of landing attacks. So add 1 thug to this location and both adjacent. That's no good. So that was the Atlantis Evades, and then Tidal Waves, move each hero 1 location away. So he's going to push you away with those. So that's kind of cool. Gonna knock heroes all away from him. Next up, we've got Mojo. So Mojo, he's got like special abilities on every one of his cards. So he's gonna grow his audience, which is cool. Challenge to help get better ratings, so he's gonna put more thugs out. That sucks. He just makes everyone discard cards. So yeah, Mojo looks like he's gonna be a major pain. Let's see what his threats are. I imagine he'd probably have some minions in here. Yep. So he's got the werewolves. They just deal 1 damage. He's got Major Domo. You can only attack him with heroics, and then he's got Spiral. And she's going to deal 2 damage. And wow, she's dealing out damage everywhere. And then he's got the spotlights. If there are any number of heroes in this villain in this location, then the villain turn, increase the ratings track by 1. So that's no bueno either. Lots of threats to go after to try to minimize his damage. Here we've got Mastermind. Again, this is that guy. I have no clue who he is, but I assume based on his attire, he's from the Hellfire Club. He's just putting guys out everywhere. Oh, he's a pretty boring, basic villain. Probably like an entry-level villain. Nothing super special with him. Let's see what his threats are. Maybe he's got some of the Hellfire Club as minions. Nope, he does not. He's got lots of stuff to just mess with you on your turn. So that was Mastermind. Next up, we've got Marrow. So she's going to be putting people out left and right. Nothing really fancy with her. That's no bueno. So both of these cards are out. When you knock her out, she goes right back to full life, and then basically you have to beat her twice. That's terrible. Let's see what her threats are. Maybe she'll have some warlocks with her or something. Bone armor. It's going to make it probably impossible to attack her while these are out. She's going to recover 1 health. Yeah, so all bad stuff. So next up, we've got Legion. So these are all his different personalities. So he's got Endgame, Chain, Time Sink, the Nazi Doctor, the Clown, Jamel Karami. So Endgame looks pretty basic. Chain looks pretty basic. Time Sink starts to get some special powers in there. The Nazi Doctor gets some special powers. Yeah. So it looks like you're probably going to start with Endgame, and then I think go to Chain, and then Time Sink. You're just going to work your way up till you get to the last one, which is probably his like best personality. Or I guess worst in that terms. So he's got these different threat cards that are all split personalities. So nothing fancy on those. However, he does have these personality cards, which changes him up quite a bit. So let's see. Oh, okay. So when you put these personality cards in, they're all going to come up with their own special rules. So the game's going to be changing depending on which mode he's in. So that's pretty cool. So every time a new personality comes out, you're going to flip up this card, and then it's going to change how the actual game plays. That's pretty cool because that means just like he's got, split personalities, the game is going to constantly change with those personalities. So you're never really sure exactly what you need to do on the next turn. So that's pretty cool. That definitely changes the game up quite a bit. Next up here we have Lady Deathstrike. So she just moves around a lot. She's got some special attacks here that makes her fire off her BAM and stuff. Wow, so that actually makes her deal more damage with her BAMs. That makes her act faster. Yeah. She's no fun. Don't like her at all. Oh, and then she's got some bad guys. So she's got a Bone Breaker. That's the tank dude. Pretty Boy. I don't know who that is. Skull Buster. Kind of looks like a Crossbones knockoff. And then she's got a couple non-minion cards. But that's cool. Good stuff. And then here we've got some extra superhero cards, which I guess were part of the stretch goals maybe. But essentially the superhero cards are whenever you're starting against a supervillain, the superheroes get a superhero card, and they also trigger kind of like the supervillain one. So let's just take one real quick. Trigger at the end of a villain's turn, you are not on the villain's location. So as long as you're not on the villain's location at the end of their turn, you can move one location closer to the villain's location. So it's just a free move. And they vary. This one's going to give you one additional card. And you can search your deck for a card. So that's pretty cool. So those are the superhero cards. Let's take a look. This looks like another villain deck. And I think this is the last of the villain decks. So first up, we've got Emma Frost. Surprising, she doesn't have a whole lot of special power moves. Yeah, so she's fairly straightforward in her villain abilities. Let's see what her threats are. She's got an illusional Namor, an illusional Sabretooth, an illusional Magic, an illusional Sebastian Shaw, and then illusional threats. So these were the ones, if you remember, from the player board, the villain dashboard. You have to attack all these illusional minions with heroics instead of punchies, because they're illusional. You can't actually punch them, I guess. So it looks like next up we've got Deathbird. So she looks fairly straightforward. There she's starting to add more people to every place. She deals damage to each hero, then does a BAM. So yeah, nothing crazy. I imagine she's going to have, she's got Vulcan. I thought she'd have more minions. She's got Vulcan. I think he was one of the Shi'ar. They're like augmented people or something. So they're kind of like mutants. They all have special powers. So yeah, and then she's got some regular ones. And then some of these, when she lands there, it's going to fire off and add extra bad guys, which is always bad for overflows. Next up, we've got Phoenix, Dark Phoenix. And she's got powers on every turn. This is kind of different. She only puts people out in certain spaces, usually it's all three. She's putting them, 1 or 2 spaces away. Oh, she eats your deck. She makes it go faster. Oh, she is nasty. Let's see what threat she has. Mental barriers. Nigh omnipotence. Heroes taking damage in this lesson. Oh, location take 1 extra damage. So yeah, that just makes you use extra heroics to fight her. Dark Phoenix does not look fun. She looks like a right pain in the butt. Callisto, I mean, she's going to be pretty straightforward, just moving around. Very, very simplistic villain. Nothing really going on with her. Let's see her threats. I imagine her threats are probably going to be a bunch of Morlock minions. Well, she's got 3 Morlock minions. She's got Caliban, Marrow, and Mask. And then she's got the Morlock tunnels. And yeah, that plays into her dashboard as part of her lose conditions. Or her win conditions, heroes lose conditions. So there we go. She's fairly straightforward. It looks like her threats, those Morlock tunnels, are going to be what kind of sets her apart. Here we've got the Brood Queen. And I imagine she's just going to be a big, beefy thing. So she's got Infect. Each brood threaten a location with any civilians discards 1 and adds 2. Oh, so they like multiply the thugs there. That's pretty bad. But yeah, let's see on her threats. I imagine she's gonna have some broods. Yep. Basically broods on every single one. So you gotta, fight all them, knock them out. I imagine they probably come back if I remember the way her dashboard worked. I imagine Avalanche is going to be pretty straightforward. Probably nothing special in his deck. He's got seismic waves. So he's basically going to... he's going to put out extra guys around him. Let's take a look at his threat. Aftershock and debris. If 1 or more overflows are triggered anywhere, each hero in this location takes a damage. Sure. Heroes ending their turn in this location take 1 damage for each crisis token. Crisis tokens are bad. We've already discussed that. Next up, we've got... Oh, wow. We've got Arcade. And he's got a ton of threat cards. And quick rebuild. Place the top card of the threat deck in the first location clockwise with no threats, starting with Arcade's location. So that's pretty sucky. Does he do that on every turn? He does do that on every turn. So, except for those. And this one's going to move them all around. But yeah, most of the time it looks like he's just going to constantly be putting out more threats. And yep, they're all kinds of traps. Luckily, though, they're all fairly easy to beat. They only take 2 instead of 3. So lots of times you'll be able to complete that on, one hero will be able to complete that on his turn and probably still be able to do something else. But yeah, a ton of threats. Arcade is pretty cool. Arcade was the last villain in the box, so I think that is the end of the villains. So from there, we'll go ahead and take a look at all of the villain minis. And I imagine some of the villains are actually going to be anti-heroes, so we'll take a look at those next. All right, so first up with the stretch goal villains is Avalanche. So Avalanche is a mutant with the power to make trembles and earthquakes. And I don't know how far his power extends, if he controls ground like an earthbender or if he just makes tremors. I think that's all he does. Like, he can shake the ground. But yeah, this is Avalanche. He was part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Not a whole lot going on with him. He's got the big A on his chest, which is, this is a comic accurate costume. It's just, very nondescript. He doesn't have a whole lot of detail with his outfit and stuff. But yeah, there you go. That is Avalanche. Next up, we have Deathbird. So I'm not super familiar with Deathbird, but I know she is part of the Shi'ar Empire, right? Which had a lot of run-ins with the X-Men. And this is a pretty cool looking figure. Her feathers are like sculpted onto her cape, which is really cool. Gives it a nice detailed look. She's got that big headdress on, which looks really cool. Yeah, so overall, this is a pretty cool figure. Like I said, I'm not really adept with the Shi'ar Empire stuff, but I know they do, factor heavily into the X-Men comics. Next up, we have Mastermind, and I know absolutely nothing about Mastermind. I'm going to assume by the way he looks that he is part of the Hellfire Club. I couldn't think of what it was. I'm going to assume that's why he looks like this. He looks like he is one of the founding fathers. It's pretty cool. They gave him that little, banister like he's standing on a staircase, which is pretty cool. That's a nice little detail. But yeah, there's, nothing really to get excited about here. It's a guy in a, petticoat or whatever, with his little frillies. But yeah, it's a cool looking, sculpt anyway, even if there's not a whole lot going on with the character that I know about. If you do know, let me know in the comments, because I know nothing about him. But there you go. That's Mastermind. Next up, we've got Callisto, and Callisto is the leader of the Morlocks. And the Morlocks are like an underground race, underground group of mutants, mostly mutants that can't pass off as human, or really like deformed or creepy looking, or just don't really fit into normal society. They can't really mix in well. So they all live underground in the sewers, and she's their leader. I don't really know what her powers are. But I recognize her from the cartoon or from the comics. I just don't know a whole lot about the Morlocks. But she's a pretty cool looking figure. I definitely like the sculpt. She's got that chain around her leg, which is, sculpted in. And that scar, good stuff. So that's Callisto. Next up is Lady Deathstrike. Now, if you are familiar with Wolverine comics, then you know that she is one of his primary villains, behind like Sabretooth. And she's got the adamantium fingernails, right? So they shoot out of her hands and like claws. And I think she was a love interest of Logan at some point, and he like leaves her or whatever, and then she feels all betrayed, so she goes to the Weapon X project, and they turn her into Lady Deathstrike. And it's pretty cool. Very nice figure with those creepy long fingers. It's almost like Freddy Krueger. So there you go. That's Lady Deathstrike. Next up, we have the Shadow King. And the Shadow King is like a real rival to Professor X. He gets into people's heads, and I think he like controls them. And he's just very, very powerful, a very powerful telepath. And he's gone to war with, the X-Men, and specifically like Professor X, because he's really the only one that can kind of go on par with him. Maybe Jean Grey. But yeah, he is a very creepy looking dude. Almost like a thing wearing a human skin suit, I guess. Just very creepy looking, and that fez hat doesn't, make him look any less creepy or intimidating. So yeah, that is the Shadow King. That's a pretty cool figure. Look at those teeth. Ugh. So next up, we have Silver Samurai, and this is yet another Wolverine villain. And he was actually in the last Wolverine movie, the Wolverine, not the Logan one, but the Wolverine. But yeah, he's this ties into, the storyline when Wolverine spent a lot of time in Japan, right? So this is a really, really dope figure. I definitely like the samurai outfit. Looks really cool. He's standing on top of like a pagoda type building. I always like how they put the detail in the base, and sometimes they tie him in really well, and other times they're just kind of generic bases. But this one, he's definitely standing on like the roof of some kind of like Japanese temple or something. But yeah, that is Silver Samurai. So yeah, cool. Next up, we have Omega Red. Now, Omega Red is a frequent villain of the X-Men. And I believe he was part of the Weapon X program as well. And he's got these, the flexible adamantium. I think it's called like carbonadium or something like that. But he's this crazy Russian dude, and he can release like poisonous spores or whatever. Yeah, he's gone to battle with them lots of times. And he's, a pretty cool looking mini with those tentacles. I kind of wish they would have done these tentacles like this for at least one of the Sentinels, but they had so many problems with just fingers. I can't imagine the tentacles making it through shipping. But yeah, there you go. That's Omega Red. Next up, we have Arcade, and this is another fun figure. I always get that giant bow tie, the top hat. He's standing on like a pinball bumper. Just a really, really cool figure. And Arcade is, he makes Murder World, and he's basically like makes these elaborate traps and stuff and traps people in his world and makes them, fight the traps to try and get out. And there was a really cool comic with him where he was the antagonist, and they basically killed off a bunch of like young Avengers and mutants and characters. They put them in kind of like a what's the movie with Katniss? Hunger Games, like a Hunger Games or Battle Royale type storyline. And it was really cool. And he was really, really devious in that. He's just kind of a crazy psychopath. But yeah, that is Arcade. And again, another one of those ones that ties in the base to the character really well. Standing on that like pinball bumper. So there you go. That's Arcade. All right. So next we've got Sauron from the Savage Lands. And Sauron is this cool like pterodactyl man hybrid. I don't think he's a mutant. I think he's a mutate, like he was created. But I'm not 100% sure. Some of my lore on the X-Men, just because there's hundreds of characters, is lacking. But this is actually one of the coolest looking figures, I think, in the entire game and all the expansions so far. I mean, this crazy pterodactyl dude, and he's like perched on that rock. Again, this is another one of those ones that really ties the base in really well. And I mean, this guy is just crazy looking. The sculpting detail in there with, his muscles and like even his back. I mean, it's just really, really cool. I don't know. This one, this might be, so far, I think this is one of my favorite actual minis. I mean, the sculpt, the pose, everything about it's just really cool. A really impressive figure. So next up, we have Pyro. Pyro is a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And if you notice, he's got translucent plastic, like we've seen on some of the figures for his fire, which is really cool. Gives it a cool look. This is a pretty nifty little figure. I like the little hoses that go to his backpack, because I think like he can control flames, but he can't make flames. So he needs these to like spark and keep the flame going. But once he has a flame, he can pretty much do whatever he wants with it. So that is pretty cool. 1/3 of the Brotherhood team in this game. And by that, I mean, it looks like you have to play the Brotherhood with Toad and Blob all together. So this is the first of those 3. And next we're going to take a look at Toad. But yep, that was Pyro. So here is Toad. Now this is not the 90s movie Toad. This is the kind of jester-looking Toad from the comics. And if you see, he's on that the broken down wall of the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. I think that's what it says. Just an awesome sculpt. Even if you're not too familiar with the character, I mean, he's really cool, and that tongue is just crazy. And I like that he's on like this really custom, non-generic base. Yeah, he is the second third of the Brotherhood of Mutants team that you play as against villains. You play them as one villain together, but yeah. So let's take a look at the last member of that team, and that is going to be Blob, but this was Toad. Cool stuff, and that one little hair up there is pretty cool. So next up we have Blob, and Blob is a big, beefy boy. He's a hunky boy. Look at him. He is massive. And Blob's ability is basically to, like, he doesn't take any damage, right? Like, he just, things go in and then pop back out of him, and he's, you know, big and strong. But yeah, pretty cool figure. There was a cool Rick Remender run where they had an alternate dimension Blob, or alternate universe Blob, and spoiler alert, but Nightcrawler defeats him because he couldn't get through his skin. He defeats him by bamfing inside of him with a shark, like into his stomach. So he basically gets eaten from the inside out. This was the final member of that team of Brotherhood of Evil Mutants in the game, and just a big, beefy, massive figure. So yeah, let's move on. Next up, we have MODOK. And MODOK is pretty cool. He's all about, you know, getting views, and like he's basically like, you know, runs his own cable channel that is like his entire universe, and he just constantly brings stuff over to entertain the masses. A lot of times it ends up being heroes and X-Men. And he's always his like arch nemesis is Longshot, who I think like used to work for him or something, and now is out on his own. But this is a cool figure. He's got the little, you know, spidery legs with the cool like scorpion tail, and you can see he's pretty creepy looking. He's got, it looks like hair, but those are all wires that go down to his tail. So yeah, this is just a really cool looking figure. And again, another one of those bases that really makes a lot of sense. He's just like crushing televisions and crawling over broken TVs and stuff, which is just a really cool, you know, little detail that they added. But yeah, that is Mojo from the Mojo verse. Next up, we have the Alien Queen. This is the Brood Queen, And they are basically intergalactic cockroaches that just like, kind of like xenomorphs, they take over and they just multiply and destroy pretty much everything. And they've had frequent run-ins with the X-Men. And this is just another really out there sculpt, so different from all the other ones. Got the big, queen headpiece, and just a big menacing figure. I really, really like this one. If you're, bug squeamish, you may not like it because it does look like a big nasty cockroach, but yeah, pretty cool looking brood queen. So there you go. And next up, we have the embodiment of the 90s extreme comics, which is Onslaught. Now, Onslaught is an amalgamation of Magneto and Professor X. He's got, the big hulking armor that was, the 90s. And he's got like this big, like armadillo piece on his back. So that, instead of a cape. And, he was a fan favorite in the Kickstarter, but he really was like, yeah, Onslaught. But I do kind of remember him, like, I think people kind of groaned whenever they were teasing this new massive, threat. And it just turned out to be the same old, which was, Magneto, but powered by Professor X. But there you go. 90s nostalgia coming back hardcore. This is Onslaught. And the last villain in the box is the Dark Phoenix. So this one is pretty cool with this Phoenix Fire translucent plastic. This has one of the largest pieces of plastic added to it. I think the next one is probably the flame effect that was on the other Phoenix character. I always forget. I think it's her daughter, Rachel Summers, I think. But yeah, this one is, it's definitely a showpiece. For painters, this looks like it's a nightmare because of all the plastic and you can't separate. Like, it's molded. This piece is like attached to her. There is no separation back there to pull them apart. So yeah, I do paint minis, and this one looks like it's going to be a nightmare, but it looks really cool. It is a cool looking mini, and especially with that Phoenix force on her back. Nice. All right, let's take a look at some of the anti-heroes now. So first up in the anti-heroes, we have Legion. So Legion is Professor X's son, and he's got I don't know if it's DID, dissociative identity disorder, or basically he's got a bunch of different personalities in his head, and each one of them has its own mutant power set. So depending on who's in control kind of determines what powers he has, which is, kind of symbolic of him being on this brain mini base. And he's definitely one of the most powerful mutants out there, just because of all of the different personalities and mutant powers he has. And this is a pretty cool looking mini. And I kind of think that he's one of the most originals in the game in terms of gameplay on both the villain side and the hero side, just in how each card does. They split up his personalities into different cards and phases of his villain character. So yeah, there you go. That is Legion.
Next up, we have Emma Frost. And if you're keeping count, this is the second Emma Frost, the first one being the Phoenix 5. Although that one is just a straight villain, this one is an anti-hero. So you can play her as a hero or a villain. It's pretty cool. They've got her, the diamonds on the ground to represent her diamond form. And again, there's not a whole lot you can do with these telepathic characters because they don't do a whole lot. But it's a pretty cool pose. They gave her something, to do, so she's just not standing there. She's like holding her cape up. And it's overall, I definitely like this one. But nothing super exciting, unless it's your favorite character. But I mean, the pose is, kind of, it is what it is. But yeah, that is Emma Frost. Next up, we have Marrow. Now, Marrow is a Morlock. And she can make these bone daggery things and shoot them out of her body and whatnot. And I think at some point, she became a leader of the Morlocks. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't quote me on it. And again, they tie in that base. She's coming up out of the sewers, which is really cool. Because the Morlocks live in the sewers. She's got the spikes coming out of her back. This is a really cool figure, and it's such a dynamic pose with the blades back, ready to, like, she just finished doing like a cross, like a double swipe. Yeah, I'm definitely digging Marrow here. She's really, really cool looking. She's got her bone ribs sticking out there. So there you go. That is Marrow. Next up, we have Spiral. Now, this is an awesome figure. I really like this one. Just swords everywhere, looking really, really intimidating. Now, Spiral is from the Mojo verse, right? And she is sometimes right-hand man to Mojo, and sometimes she's not. I know there was a run there that I read where she was part of X-Force. That was pretty cool. She was the good guys, and X-Force is kind of like, they're all anti-heroes, right? Because they're not really good guys. They will murder people. They'll kill the bad guys. They do the dirty wet work that the X-Men won't do. And yeah, so she fit right in there. She does some cool stuff. She can like open portals and stuff and teleport. Yeah, this is a really, really cool looking figure with all those arms and swords. Very nice. I definitely dig this one a lot. And last up, we have Namor, the Submariner. So again, if you're keeping count, this is the second Mariner figure, or the second Namor figure, the Submariner. The first one's in the Phoenix 5 expansion we took a look at. And this one is him in his classic look with his little, scaled undies. And he's got the cool translucent plastic, which the whole base, I just realized the whole base is translucent. So it's like he's coming up out of the water. That is definitely different. I didn't even notice that until I was just looking at it right here on camera. So yeah, this is Namor. Luckily, his rod isn't as crooked here. It's in a little bit better shape. Yeah, this is a pretty cool looking figure. He's got the one shell. I don't think he got the memo from Demolition Man with the 3 shells, but he's got 1 shell, so maybe he knows how to use it. Maybe he's a little bit better, more efficient. But yeah, that is Namor, and that's going to do it for the supervillain and anti-hero minis. Then we'll be taking a look at the superhero minis. So there you go. Thanks for watching. So that was all of the villain components and villain minis and anti-hero minis in the Marvel United Stretch Goal box. If you haven't watched the superhero Stretch Goal unboxing, go ahead and check that out on the channel. We go through all the cards and all of the minis for the hero in that video. Yeah, so if you have any questions, did you back? Did you get the all-in? Did you get the stretch goals? I mean, there's so much in this thing. Even if you only did one of the smaller tiers and got the stretch goal, you're going to have a ton of replay value just out of this box alone. But that was Marvel United X-Men, the stretch goals box for the villains.
We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a comment or hit the like button. It really does help us out. If you have suggestions for future videos, let us know in the comments as well, and then subscribe to see what we come up with next.